common theme that I see come up, and this we'll transition into this, right? So we talked about the price point. Apple TV was something that Don Garber spoke about, and he mentioned that they have 120 unique viewers each match, which is up 50% from last year, right? A lot of times when people talk about Apple TV, and we've talked about Apple TV a lot on this show this year specifically with various guests, which has been really great to see a lot of insight. But this price point always comes up, right? And it's what was it? I think it's like $99 for the year. Is that right? Something along those lines? Close? Yeah. I've yet to see any platform for any sport be that cheaper. And unless I'm not looking like MLB TV is a couple hundred a year. NFL ticket last season, and I don't know what the price is this year. NFL ticket was $700 last year for 16 games. NBA TV, I don't watch the basketball. Connor, you might be able to give me some of that too. But if you're thinking about price per game, right? Let's just cut it down to 30, right? You're paying $3 a game to watch at home. I think that this idea that it was too expensive came from a really small but very loud section online that said, "Oh my gosh, it's not worth the price because I don't like the league and nobody else should get it either." And instead of people doing their research and comparing it, they just went along with it. And I think you're seeing that now with this 50% increase from last year, right? And this is where I want to transition into it, because if people are saying, "Oh, that's just because of Messi." Messi was here last year too. So if Messi's here last year and then he's here this year and there's a 50% increase, maybe people are recognizing that the value is there. Maybe what they're doing is working. I want to kind of share your thoughts on the idea of the number, right? 120K unique viewers and the increase from last year. John, what are your thoughts?
First, I want to say you compared it to other American sports, which I
Mm.
think is interesting. I'm not going that route at all. My
Oh,
comparison is
interesting.
to other soccer streaming options. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of the market here in the US that MLS has not got is actual soccer fans. There's lots of young soccer fans that don't watch MLS, but they watch
Mm-hmm.
other leagues. So if you look at like ESPN Plus, there you're getting 10 plus leagues, La Liga, the Championship, et cetera, for 15, what is it, 99 a month for on that one. It is 11.99 a month for all those leagues. Whereas MLS, comparatively, just for MLS as one league, you're paying 15.99 a month. And then if you look at the quality of some of these leagues that are being on offer, like Paramount Plus, for example, and the way they package the fact that they have the Champions League, and that's actually cheaper than Apple as well. I think when you look at that personally, I think the value for streaming package, that's where I say it's not there. I also think that what you're talking about with this number, the Don Garber gave us,
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely outlying number, right? So there's no data to reference this from. It's just the first ever number that we've heard from Apple TV. So 50% increase on unique viewers. What was the original number to begin with? What's the new number? Like, this is the new number, sure, so you can calculate the old number, but what is that metric against? What data do we have to compare that with? Before, when you have actual TV and you have viewership and they can look at that and you can sell that to sponsors, how can you sell this to a sponsor? You're going to say, we have 50% more unique viewers. I also think that's an average. So how many of those are just Messi viewers and then they're averaging out across MLS? If you look at like Montreal's unique viewers, is that going to look so good?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of flaws in what they're trying to sell us.
Connor, your thoughts?
I mean, I think people can have valid gripes with, the pricing and how many different streaming services are out there. I mean, I think it's just kind of continuously climbing. They constantly continue to get more expensive. There constantly continues to be all these different streaming platforms that you have to pay for if you want to watch all the things you want to watch. So to me, I feel like it comes down to at that point, like almost a marketing game. Who's going to be the best marketer? And I feel like the answer at the moment is very clear. It is the Premier League. They are the far and away best marketers that they constantly command the most eyeballs. They have so many more viewers than like any other league around the world. And based on that, I think if you come down to a decision where it's like, all right, here's my personal cutoff for how much I'm going to spend on all these streaming services. I'm going to take that money and I'm going to spend it on the Premier League because they may not say it, they may not come out right out and say like, oh, they marketed it better, but they'll just like subconsciously be like, oh, I want to watch the Premier League. Like I've seen more about it. Like I know the players a bit more than I do, Major League Soccer. I'm going to put my money there and not put my money on Apple TV instead. So I almost feel like it comes down to like, what's the strategy to kind of get more people to switch from somewhere else to buy your service, not necessarily like we have to lower our price so that we can make sure that everybody buys every service. It's like how can we get more people to be more committed to watching our league, especially if it's people in the US. Like that's supposed to be your cream of the crop right there. I mean, you should be sweeping up all those people as much as you can be.
I am loving this conversation because it has so many branch points into other things that we're going to talk about. So we're going to be able to wrap it together really, really nicely. One of the things that we will end up talking about that I want to start with is this idea of how are you going to spell, going back to John's point, how are you going to sell the sponsors, right? Well, they just announced that they have two huge new sponsors coming in Walmart and Amazon TV, right? So whatever these metrics are, it was enough to get two brand new sponsors worth millions and millions of dollars to come in and do their business here. That being said, I think a lot of people were more hung up less on the fact of where did these numbers come from, which is a very fair gripe, by the way, John. I think with it being the first time ever, where are the metrics coming from? Do you believe them, especially in the world of MLS where things become fluffed, right? Very, very easily to portray an image. It's a fair gripe, but I don't think that they're unbelievable, right? If he came out and said we have 1 million unique viewers on each match, okay, red flag. 15 million people a week are not watching your service. I promise they're not. If you're telling me that 1.8 million people a week are tuning in at some point, right? Because the problem I had with the numbers as a number nerd myself was there was no definition on what viewer meant. Was it they flipped on and accidentally hit that when they were looking to go to Severance on Apple TV? Oh, that's a viewer to me, right? That's where my gripe comes from with these numbers as a
These
as
are
a
like
data guy.
viewers on X that just scrolling.
Right. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that's a viewer.
I accidentally clicked the link by mistake. Right. Like, is that a viewer? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 90 minutes? What does that mean? Right. And then, like you mentioned, the majority of those, and I think that this is a very easy to believe take, is that the majority of those are coming from Messi subs who are trying to watch their star, who are maybe the most annoying people on the planet, but we move. I think 1.8 million viewers a week is a legitimate number that I would believe with Apple TV, regardless of what that means, right? The problem is it doesn't take in people who have maybe multiple screens up, right? There are times where I've got Red Bull on the TV and I've got another game up here, right? So two of those views are just one. How many times does that happen, right? Nobody talks about what MLS 360 numbers look like. I don't know if that's in the viewers or if that's in whatever, right? We don't know where that works in. I think that the up from 50% last year actually casts more worry on what they were doing last year. Because I think last year they were saying, oh, yeah, we're well over 1 million people every week. Well, 50% of 1.8 is 900K. So if you were well clear of 1 mil, you're leading me on to something I don't necessarily believe, right? But I don't think that this is necessarily bad. I think it's just not as good as it can be, right? And this goes back to the idea of if we were on cable, would we get more people? And I had this conversation with Eli Lesser. Connor and I have this chat a lot, but I want to ask you, John, cable versus streaming, where do you stand? And where do you think MLS benefits the most from?
I do think the sponsors are important. I do know and have heard about the fact that several clubs have had issues with the fact that they don't really know how to report like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
So because of they were so used to traditional and being a lot of the way the whole system worked was being able to take those viewership numbers, sell them to the sponsors. So now you see some of these markets kind of going back to that a little bit, and you see certain games going on TV and even Apple TV. Sorry, MLS is like we're gonna have some games on certain nights on regular channels. So I think it shows that they kind of went back a little bit. My biggest thing is that we're now behind a paywall, and that just doesn't allow for organic viewers. It does not allow for people just to be scrolling. And I think that even within Apple, right, if you've gone to Apple and you're saying, I want to watch Severance or, Ted Lasso or one of their many good shows that they do make, you're then even not able just to flick over to MLS. You're still within a paywall within a paywall. So
Mhm.
they not only, I think personally, made it a little bit too expensive for the value of product of soccer of what it is and comparatively globally. I think also they made it so that it's so difficult just to be able to find a game. And as we get closer to the World Cup, a lot of these sponsors that you're talking about, oh, we're going to want to come on, they all want to come on board for the World Cup so they get lots of eyes.
Mhm.
And they're going to want to be on national TV. You know, they're not going to be want to be behind a paywall for the world. I mean, the World Cup is not going to be on Apple TV. Like, it's not going to be behind a paywall. So they're just going to be associated with soccer. But the big thing is they want to hit those big viewership numbers as the actual event hits the TV.
Sure. If Don Garber gets the World Cup on Apple TV, build the statue, dude. The amount of money
I
that he'd get
mean,
out of that, build the
yeah,
statue.
sure. It's just not gonna
Um,
happen.
I know, right? Can you imagine the uproar of people online would be enough that would feed families. That sort of income would be insane. Connor, your thoughts on that?
I mean,
There it is. Straddle that fence. Straddle that fence.
you're such an instigator.
I like it, Connor. You got to argue with me. This is good. This is what we're here for.
This has been great so far, and it hasn't crossed the line of insulting, which is usually where we get to a Connor. So this is good.
Please,
We're
this
at
is
a good
No,
nothing.
point.
You know, Alex, this is nothing, Andrew. We're fine. You know, I've been way worse.
no, I genuinely like I have not heard anything that I've been able to disagree with. I mean, I've agreed the entire way through. I mean, I think there's definitely a point to mention of like you can't really just like you said, you can't scroll onto a game. Like you can't just flip a channel and be like, "Oh, this is on, let me check it out." I would definitely be really curious to seen like what the numbers looked like back then of maybe how many people kind of just stumbled onto the channel and then kind of stuck with it long term. Because I do think I could see people kind of flipping onto a game and being like, "Oh, this is good. Like I'll watch this for tonight," but then not really revisiting it later on, and then just kind of like, "Oh, it's like you watched the game one time. Like now I've heard of this Columbus team or I've heard of this, Cincinnati team." But not really like taking it much further than that. In terms of like, I guess the conversation on cable versus streaming, I guess it kind of depends on the direction, like the demographic that Major League Soccer wants their fandom to be. Because I would think if they want to go for the younger fans, then streaming makes more sense because they're not really going the cable route. Um, but I guess if they're kind of going for maybe people who have more historical ties and have been around like the teams for longer and the league for longer, then cable might be the slightly better route. And that's where you can like open that door up that John was talking about, where you can maybe get the couple of people who stumble upon it randomly.
Okay.
I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, Andrew. I feel
I,
like you've talked a lot about like just kind of like the cable side of Major League Soccer.
so Eli Lesser and I had a really good chat about this back when Connor was avoiding me even harder during something he called busy season. He doesn't work. He doesn't have. I know he doesn't have a real job, so I don't know what this busy season was. But we sat down and chatted about this because Apple TV was really, really in the front of everybody's mind, and we both shared this idea, and it was something that I have ever since Apple TV came out, and I heard people talking about this idea of cable needing to be at the forefront and to get these random eyes that doesn't exist in a level that actually can be measured in terms of impactfulness. The number of people who will scroll through the channels on TV, by the way, I don't know, Connor, if you when you're visiting home, if your parents or a sister or whatever are scrolling through the channels anymore. That first off doesn't happen. When I go home, my pops, he's got two channels on. He's got the Mets and he's got Jeopardy. And he goes last, 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 last. There's no scrolling. Combine that with the number of people who have already cut the cord, completely and just do streaming. So all of that is gone to begin with. And then you combine that with the fact that you are now trying to get the attention of two different people if they happen to scroll over a game at 3 p.m. on a Sunday on ESPN. Either the people who have no idea what soccer is and have grown up saying, soccer's for sissies, I don't like soccer, or the Euro snobs who say, "Oh my God, this is terrible. I just watched Arsenal play Liverpool, and now I have to watch Montreal versus Austin, click off. The number of people who will scroll through, land on an MLS game, watch it for more than 35 seconds, and then say, wow, I love this so much. I'm now going to follow this team every week in out for the next 15 years, maybe can fit on this hand. Maybe.
That's
You
fair.
combine, yeah. And this is my point where I'm saying I'm not here to say, oh, go on, John. Go on. Yeah, I'll let you jump in
Can
there.
I counter with you? And I'm gonna
Please.
say that maybe I was thinking like old school, but
Sure.
really what I want to say is like I want organic viewers in terms of people that are interested in soccer but will
Mm-hmm.
land on MLS that might not necessarily, go out and search for it. So maybe what we're talking about is a combination of, streaming, but also organic viewership. And if
Mm-hmm.
they were on Paramount Plus, MLS, or they were on ESPN, where someone goes to watch another league, because these streaming services have so many other leagues and they're playing soccer all day on there, like CBS especially and
Mm-hmm.
Paramount, spending a huge amount of effort to have things like morning footy and like even covering NWSL all day on their channels. So
Yeah.
this is organic soccer viewership. If we were in a package like that that's $15 and someone's sitting there and they've watched Serie A and they've watched, Premier League, and then it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and oh, an MLS game is coming up next. That's organic viewership of the right kind. So maybe we should modernize the thinking. And I think you're right that a lot of people are not watching cable.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me is what I'm thinking with Apple, that you're really just completely sectioned off. You're not even getting the other soccer interested people coming over, in my opinion.
No, and I will 100% agree with you in the idea that Apple TV was the wrong place to land. However, Apple TV was making a push to say we're going to be the next big sports streamer and we're going to overpay for the product, $2.5 billion over 10 years. Nobody probably was even getting close to 1 billion, right? So they overpaid for a product for us to be the guinea pig. Don Garber said it's the best deal we're going to get that's going to set us up for the next 10 years to do all of the changes we want to make financially. We have to take the deal and see where it goes. I don't disagree with you saying that Apple TV was the wrong choice to be. I would have loved to end up on Paramount Plus. I would have loved to end up on Peacock, where the Premier League is. I would have hated if we ended back up on ESPN, where everything's filmed on a toaster and it's ridiculously difficult to go find games. I mean, it took me. I try my best on Saturdays to turn on any game that's on ESPN. Just kind of flip through and select one. It takes me 3 minutes to find something because it's so hidden in these things. It's not very easy. The idea that these people, I don't think that you're, and like I said, I've said this before, I don't think you're getting these people. And even if you, I don't know if you work as a coach with, the youth soccer groups. I know Connor doesn't quite, but I work with my kids at U15 now. So they're 13, 14 years old. They've got the attention span of a goldfish. The second you stop talking to them, they're off doing something else. And that includes if you are trying to show them something, like a whiteboard thing, they're instantly looking at the grass, right? Because if they had their phone in their hand, they'd just be doing this, right? So if you put them on a game and one of the parents switches on and finds a game, they're going to look up at it for 2 seconds and then look down because the only thing that they care about Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man U, Man City, Liverpool, whatever, or whoever the biggest star is in X league that matters. If that game's on, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to watch him because my friends tweet about him," or I don't know what the kids are on these days because I'm not hip with the times, but they don't pay attention to things that aren't popular in the media, I guess. And MLS never has been, and really not for quite a while ever will be. So I don't think going back to cable changes that. And I do think that we need to find another partner or at the very least hope that Apple can get more people. So Apple had started going with MLB. If they can pull MLB over, it's a step in the right direction. If they can't, we're stuck on an island. And I agree with you that it's the wrong place to be and we need to make a decision to get out of it. The biggest thing that I can agree with people on the cable thing is what happened is they took longtime fans from 96 or 2010 or wherever you joined the league from who had been watching in stadium and in person. And then they said, I'm not buying another streaming service, so I'm not just going to watch anymore. And that's the group that I agree that this move has alienated. But we haven't alienated the potential millions of new eyeballs that everybody has seen. And we haven't alienated the people who are never going to watch anyway, right? The people who are so dead set against MLS being a successful league that anything that they do will be wrong. those two groups of people never were in the bubble to begin with, in my opinion. That's me on my soapbox. I'm now done with that.
I fear I may make this like a 2 hour episode because I have two things I wanted to mention on this.
You never have
Um,
anything to mention, and now you want to mention two things? My goodness.
yeah, listen, I'm bringing my end of the bargain here.
New year, new
Um,
you, man. New year, new
the first
you.
thing I wanted to talk, yeah, New Year in the middle of August. The first thing I wanted to mention was the group that you were talking about before, like the kids that are like 13, 14, the ones that are like, oh, I only watch, Barcelona, Real Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how much those people actually watch games, period.
They don't.
I,
That's a great point.
I, that's what I was gonna say. Like if you're telling me
They watch ISO
Barcelona,
Speed. That's what they watch.
yeah, exactly. They probably watched the Sidemen All Star game more than they've watched actual like
Straight
football
up. Great
matches.
point. Keep
Um,
talking. You're good. You're
yeah,
making
so
good
like
points. You're allowed to keep going.
if you think they're gonna watch Barcelona play against like Elche next year, you're out of your mind. They're not. You maybe get them to watch Barcelona, Real Madrid, or Barcelona, Atletico Madrid,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably about it. Like probably same thing for the Prem too. Like as much as the Prem has been drawing eyes, and you got like all these people that are like, oh, I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm a Man City fan. If Man City's playing Burnley next year, there's a high chance they're not watching that game.
Mm-hmm.
If Man City's playing Arsenal, now we're kind of talking about a different story. So it's going to be hard to get those people regardless to like actually sit and watch a game, as you were talking about. The second thing I wanted to talk about was I definitely do like the idea of kind of mixing Major League Soccer and other sports on the same platform, whether that's like other soccer leagues or other American leagues. I'm leaning more towards American leagues though, because I feel like someone might be more tempted to kind of throw on an MLS game that's on the same subscription platform if the games are like closer together time wise. Because if you just throw, like, let's say you throw MLS onto Peacock and majority of those games are at 10 a.m., those games are going to wrap up by like noon. You're going to have this break in time now before you really get to the MLS games where I think people are just going to be like, all right, that's too long into the future. I'm just going to flip it off. They're not going to come back to it later on. But it's like if you have baseball per se, like you had on like you mentioned on Apple TV, let's say there's a 3 o'clock afternoon, 4 o'clock game. I've seen plenty of like 4 o'clock start games. Let's say the game wraps up around 7. You could just immediately go right over to watching any MLS game because majority of them are around 7 p.m. And I think you're more likely to get that person to flip on an MLS game than one that has to wait hours in between a game to finish from like the Italian league or the Spanish league before they can switch over to an MLS game. I don't think they'll come back to it to throw it on, but I think they'll do it if it's convenient.
Nice, Connor. Good
That's
job.
the end of my
John,
soap opera box or whatever.
Yeah, I
John, you got
agree.
anything to add there?
I totally agree. The timing has to be back to back to back. Like that's the
Mhm.
yeah, and there are some times of year. I mean, I kind of akin it to when like the World Cup is on, and there's that like beautiful. You just like watch one game after another for like every day has got like three games back to back, and they're all at perfect times. That's the kind of thing that you want to have in the situation. But I agree with you, Connor. You can't have that gap. You gotta be able to fill the day, whether that with soccer or with other sports. But it's better to be grouped with something than being on an island for sure.
Good. I'm glad we've came full circle. We all agree on things. And one of the things that I think we can end on before we move to our next section is the idea that what is the target audience? And this is something we talk about a lot on the show, where if you put it in front of Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga fans, I remember specifically, had it not been for Red Bull being as good as they were in 2010 with Thierry Henry, 2013, Thierry Henry era, I would go from watching an Everton team that was top seven in the Prem every year to a Red Bull team playing against Chicago, who was like Chicago now, just dreadful. And it was like, I can't believe that I just went from watching this or the World Cup or the Gold Cup or whatever it may be, and now I need to watch MLS. That sort of change still exists in a lot of people's minds because the quality isn't there. And we've talked about that a lot, and it's something we're going to hit on just a little bit down the road. But the target audience needs to be somebody who will take in that with almost like a blank slate, right? Blank slate of what am I looking at? What am I watching?